It's good to talk. None more so than when it comes to talking about money in a relationship. For some reason, having conversations about money, dealing with money in relationships is a very difficult thing for most couples to do. It's not an easy topic to talk about. It's not an easy one to handle. And that's a shame because it's a major contributor to putting strains on couples' relationships and also a common reason why couples' relationships disintegrate and break up. And it doesn't have to be that way. Join me after a short intermission. My name is Mahmood, and I'm going to be talking to you about handling money in a relationship. I'm going to give you some tips and some thoughts about how to handle that so you have a more effective, productive relationship and money doesn't actually get in the way. If you've got some comments to share, by all means, chuck them into the comments box. We will answer them as we go through. If you're coming up on replay, thank you very much for your company. Put hashtag replay in there so I know that you're actually out there. Folks, in a few seconds, we're going to play some wonderful intro music, and then we're going to be back talking about money and your relationships. Welcome back. What a wonderful way to just get the old blood flow circulating for me, and hopefully it's doing the same for you. So, folks, my name is Mahmood. By qualification, I'm an accountant, so hide that garlic. I'm also an educator and a mentor, and I've been running my own business for about 28 plus years here, and I deal with all things money, financing, in terms of people's business life and their personal life. And for me, money attitudes and money mindset spills over not just into your business life, but into your personal life as well. Now, as we go through these tips, by the way, please don't take these as a checklist here. These are a blend of things that I would recommend that you think about as a couple, and they're going to be met in varying shades here. Now, in terms of, as I said, you're more than welcome, folks. This is basically a Q&A live session. If you come up in the recording or questions to share, please do chuck them into the box. I'll do my best to answer questions as we go through. If there's anything specifically that comes up during the course of this conversation, this broadcast, I'm more than happy to have a look at it and come back to you accordingly. And what wonderful things here, this truly international environment that we operate in. I'm just going to say hello to Stella. Stella, good morning. Good morning in the UK. And I would imagine Kenya's about 2 hours ahead. So it's about 12:30 in Kenya. Thank you very much for joining me today. If you've got any points to share, Stella, we'd love to hear from you as we go through. So that's superb. So good afternoon, I believe it is to Kenya and Stella, and it's good morning in the UK. So, folks, as I said, talk about money in your business, let alone your personal life, is a really difficult, tough thing to do. And there's a number of good reasons behind that. And as we're going through here, as I share some thoughts and some tips with you, I think you're coming into a relationship that's going to have some degree of commitment, whether you're getting married or you're just living together, that makes no difference. But once you decide to make that commitment to share your time, your life with your partner, then it's really critical that if you want to have a really good, productive relationship, I'm not offering obviously any relationship advice directly, it's those money demons, there's those money monsters. So all of us have baggage in our lives pretty much. So when we get together with somebody, there may be issues that have gone on before. When it comes to money, it's exactly the same. So you may have, for example, in a life before you met your partner, have accrued maybe student debt. You may have been in a previous relationship where debt has accrued. You may have issues going on outside there. And those money monsters, by the way, could be things like income sources. But whatever that financial baggage actually is, it's really critical before you get enmeshed in that relationship and develop it, that you share that. Now, I'm not saying the first meeting, the first time you're looking at each other and having dinner, and you say, by the way, and then just dump it on them, but make sure before you effectively tie the knots, whether it's getting married or getting formally entwined each other, that you share those demons with your partner. It's important, very much so, that if you want to deal with money adequately, you've got to not see it as an encumbrance. You've got to not see it as a negative thing. Now, it's not an easy conversation to have necessarily, and I'll share some thoughts as we go through this broadcast as to how to best approach it. So those money demons, those money monsters, that financial baggage that you've got before you have met your partner, make sure that you share them and make sure they're aware of that. Now, the key issue here in terms of when you're having any conversations, especially with topics that you're not very comfortable with, is to have what I call empathy. Now, empathy does not mean that you necessarily agree with your partner's habits, doesn't necessarily mean you agree with what your partner is doing, but empathy is trying to put yourself in the position and looking at the world through that person's eyes. So empathy is a really critical characteristic to have when you're talking about money issues with your partner. When you're dealing with that, and you may have a family as well, by the way, and that's going to be doubly important here. So try and understand, try and put yourself in the shoes of your partner to understand what's behind their behavior. Typically clashes over money, arguments over money, which can be many and varied, okay, isn't necessarily about the actual transaction itself, but it's probably the temperament. So when we have arguments with our partners about money, it typically is a clash of temperaments as much as it is about the actual financial transaction that's going on. Now, we, in our upbringing, you know, for our parents, our friends, our culture, our environment here, there may be different impacts that we have on that, how our money mindset is formulated over time. We could come from a family that didn't have a great deal of money itself, so therefore being cautious with spending money could be as much a fear and anxiety about not going back into that same situation. It could be somebody reacts completely the opposite way. It could be that your family background, your cultural background is such that money wasn't really talked about. It was considered a dirty word. Financial education definitely varies within society and within different groups, economically and otherwise, and therefore money may not be actually a topic that's very often talked about. So actually trying to discuss it in your relationship, you may find that that's going to be quite challenging. So lots of different things influence and impact on our behavior. Lots of things impact on our attitude and reaction to money. So trying to understand where your partner is coming from, trying to talk to them in a very calm and positive environment here is going to be really important for you to continue those money conversations. So what have we talked about so far? We've talked about sharing and making your partner aware of the financial baggage that you carry with you. And that baggage could have come from a life as a single person, life from a previous relationship. It could be empathy that we need to encourage, definitely. Remember, empathy is not the same as agreeing, but you do need to share, have some view and perspective from how your partner sees the world. What's underneath that behavior and how that money is actually dealt with. Now, if you're thinking, how do I actually broach up a difficult topic? One way in there is to actually understand each other's personalities. And there are many different types of money personality that you can meet. So some people are naturally what they call savers. They're very cautious. They might be turning off the lights. You might be thinking, well, actually, my finances are such that you don't need to do that. They'll be very cautious. They're turning off the lights. They're very cautious about spending money. They hoard money. They save money. And again, that could be symptomatic and reflective of something that's happened historically in their lives. So we've got those two key things here. So what do we need to do next to actually have those really positive and healthy money conversations? It's goals. Now, as a couple in your relationship, it's really useful to check in with each other, typically 2 or 3 times a year, and understand what your life and financial goals are. So depending where you are in your relationship, are you saving for a particular piece of household furniture that's quite significant? Are you saving for a holiday? You know, what's your aligned goals in terms of bringing up your children, in terms of education? What about retirement? So again, depending where you're on that in your life's journey as such, you know, what do you have as a couple as your common household, your common financial goals? If you don't have that understanding of what your financial goals are, and you don't align your behavior with that, then literally it's like you're treading 2 separate paths. As a couple, you know, a couple relationship, if it's the right one, is much stronger in some respects than being individual there as well. So again, when you're in a relationship here, do you have a commonality? Do you actually have an understanding what your life and financial goals are? And if you don't, maybe that's the time to discuss them. Maybe that's time to have them. And again, typically check in 2 or 3 times a year just to make sure you're both conducting yourself and your behavior and everything else that's going on towards achieving that financial goal. Practically, the B word. Now, the B word is not swearing, it's budgeting. Less than a third of household less a third of families, less a third of individuals as well, by the way, actually do what's called a household budget. And when you hear that B word, that budgeting, in some people, it creates that idea it's a straitjacket you're creating. It's about restriction, it's about not doing things. Far from that. A budget approach, budgeting your household spend, budgeting for your household income, enables you, if anything, to actually liberate yourself, and it can really, really improve your financial and your mental well-being. A budget to me represents your route map of what's happening in your life over typically the next 6 months to a year. It's saying, based on what we are doing as a family, and this is the same discipline, by the way, that has applied to your business world. We're talking about couple relationships here and money, but the principles still apply in your business life as well. So a budget in your household says, we as a couple, with taking into account maybe any obligations, children, and all the rest of it, this is what we're spending. This is where the money's coming in. These are our savings targets, perhaps. So maybe you want to have as a goal, as a target, saving towards a holiday, a household purchase, maybe a deposit on a new house, maybe you want to relocate. So put that in your plan. One of the liberating things about a budget is it does two or three things. Number one, it translates what's going on in your life, and it makes, in numerical terms, what is likely to happen. Most people live lives reactively, and therefore when big bills come out of the woodwork for utilities, for insurance, which we know are facing big pressures here, it comes as a surprise and we're not prepared for it. And being not prepared for something can actually be quite emotionally draining. What we need to do is to anticipate, to build that in. What also a budget does, it actually enables you to challenge what's going on. Now, by challenging what goes on, that means when you look at your outgoings, it's surprising that you may have, for example, regular monthly subscriptions that you've taken out for something. At the time, they're already quite modest, and you might think it's only a few pounds, a few naira, a few dollars, whatever, and therefore it's not significant. But these things do count up, and they do compound to be quite significant over a period of a year. So understanding what's going on in your household enables you to make good couple decisions. It's saying, okay, this spend that we've got, how does that enrich our life? If it adds value to your life, if it makes your life more enjoyable, and it has those benefits, it's not to say slash it and get rid of it. You may consider keeping it. If it does really nothing for you, then you can have a situation of either eliminating that from your household budget, or you can look for alternatives. But actually knowing what's going on financially enables you to plan, enables you to decide what is good in your household budget, and it also gives you a greater level of greater level of certainty, and lessens the anxiety of not knowing what's coming ahead. You can also adapt your budget in terms of what if scenarios, in terms of change of employment, in terms of change of financial circumstances. If there are gaps between money coming in and money going out, that gives you the opportunity to understand what you need to do to plug that gap as well. And for me, that puts you in much firmer control in your household, and it strengthens your budget. So don't look at it as a straitjacket. You can budget in for nice treats. You can budget in terms of family days out, going away. All those things can be factored into your budget. So it's a route map to get towards your financial goals. If you've never done a budget before, by the way, if you want to drop a comment in the box here, and I'll give you a link after this broadcast here to some guides and some tools and tips about how to put a financial budget together. So let's recap what we got, folks. We've talked about empathy. We talked about money monsters. We talked about aligning your goals with your partner. We talked about budgeting. Again, it brings dread in some people, but I'm a big believer and a big proponent of household budgeting. And budgeting per se is a very liberating process. Personalities we've talked about previously. Now, if you find it difficult, as I said, to broach the topic of money with your partner, there could be inequity in your relationship. One partner might be earning good money. You may not be earning a great deal. You might be both on comparable salaries. One person may be the person who's running the household. One person may be the one who's earning the money. So when you've got a shift and a change and a disparity in income levels, that can, again, make those conversations quite difficult. Again, Money in some relationships is seen very much as a power tool. And what we're trying to do is to build harmonious relationships. And again, that money can actually be a lever to actually exert disproportionate power in that relationship here. So leave your ego at the front door. You know, there's a reason you're with your partner. And if you want that partnership, that relationship to flourish, to prosper, don't damage it by having toxic attitudes and toxic behaviors as far as money is concerned. Some relationships, I'll share my own personal experience here with my wife, is that some couples prefer their money just to go into one pot. Now, what that means is the partner, for example, who might be earning a higher level of salary, higher level of income, may micromanage and monitor what's being spent by the person they think is not actually contributing a great deal. Obviously, not a very healthy attitude to have, but it does happen, and I have seen it occur. You may think that actually what a good thing is to do is to actually have separate bank accounts. Now, I know many relationships have joint bank accounts. That has its plus points. Everything goes into the common pot. But decide with each other, if you are going to have a common household bank account, effectively what each person can have in terms of their own little spending. You don't want to be micromanaging what somebody is doing. Some couples, quite possibly, it does happen in my household, has separate bank accounts. So for myself, my wife earns her money. She does with that what she wants to. We come together on common household spending. But again, I'm not interested, and I don't mean that as a flippant thing, about what she spends her money on. That's for her to decide, and it's her life. That keeps her independence. But we come together as a couple, knowing, you know, what the common shared goals are and what the common things to spend money on are as well. So separate bank accounts are good for maintaining independence. They're not everybody's cup of tea, but it's something you might want to explore. We don't necessarily want to be accountable to our partners for every dollar, every pound, every naira that we're actually spending. So let's come into now the next few things. Language. Language is a really key thing. And when I say language, it's the use of the vocabulary, it's the use of the words we're using when we have those conversations with our partner. Now, in our mind, we may see our partner or ourselves as our behavior. Don't use words like reckless. Don't use words like no, out of control. Don't use negative words, because those negative words are likely to put the defenses up, and it's very difficult to get a constructive dialogue going on. Now, you may feel under pressure, you may not feel under pressure, but again, the very careful use of language, the words that you're using when you communicate with a partner, can be very important in having very productive conversations, or conversations that can be very heated. And remember that statistic I quoted at the very beginning of the broadcast is effectively finances are, I think they might even be the top one, the most common reason why there are pressures and strains on couples' relationships, and the most common reason for why couples separate and their relationships break down. If everything else in the relationship is positive, it would seem a shame that that will be the thing that actually causes that rupture, that fracture in a couple's relationship. So use of language, that safe space, what some people find that really works productively. If you've not created that culture where you discuss money, and talking about money should be as natural as anything else here. We're not talking about being obsessed with conversations about money, but you need to have the dialogue with each other. You need to have a conversation about money. You need to know how your behaviours impact on the household, because that does spill over and that does have negative consequences within whoever's in that household. What some people do is, in a very light-hearted way, there are lots of websites out there where you can find out what your money personality is actually like. So are you a saver? Are you an investor? Are you somebody who's what's called like a debtor? So your money personality, and we all have different personalities. It's a good personality quiz here. You may want to check it out and have that as a very light-hearted introduction to talk about money. And one other thing I would probably say on that topic about talking about money is, don't go for a big, massive, if you've never talked about money before, a big, massive conversation, you know, at the very beginning. Do these things incrementally, modify and change your behavior, and you'll find it'll be much more productive for you as you go through. Now, folks, we're coming up towards, I suppose, the end of this broadcast here. It's a short broadcast. This is going to be a regular spot every Saturday. So I've done my live broadcast on and off over the last few years at varying times. I'm now settling back into what I did before on a Saturday at 10:30. We are going to be talking about lots of topics on I Hate Numbers here, not just in the personal financial space, but in the business space predominantly. So again, obviously, I'd love it if you could actually join me again next week and subsequent weeks here as we broadcast here. I'm going to do a shout out over the next few weeks for guests to appear on the show. So if you're on that business space, if you've got some ideas and thoughts to share, watch out for when I do a call out for guests to be interviewed and have that conversation with me on I Hate Numbers. Last couple of things that we want to sort of wrap up with. So being a couple is important, in my opinion, to maintain your individual independence and integrity and identity, but also to join forces as a couple, because that's the reason, presumably, you've got together. So you need to make sure that comes throughout. Other things to be aware of when you are in this situation here is there's the practical stuff. Now, I'm going to mention this, different countries have different regulations, different rules. If you're coming into a relationship afresh, some couples like to go down the route of what's called a prenup, a prenuptial arrangement. That's as much perhaps to protect the assets they might have built up historically. Some people might see that as an insult. But if you do have that situation where you might want to protect perhaps children from a previous relationship, you might want to protect your assets, having that conversation about prenuptials may be the way that you want to progress. They are certainly becoming more popular. And in the United Kingdom here, even though they have no direct legal force here, courts will support them, as long as all parties agree, as long as that transparency is there before you enter into your relationship. We talk about language, we talk about the style, and all of those things come together, in my opinion, to give you a much more productive money relationship. And the last thing is secrets. Try not to have them. So if you're taking out credit cards, make sure your partner is aware of what you're doing. Now, it may be, different circumstances that have created that situation where you feel you can't share something with your partner, but transparency, honesty, and the minimal level of secrets that you have with your partner is always going to be a good thing. So folks, listen, I hope you got some value and some benefit out of this broadcast. I'm going to be back on air next Saturday at 10:30. I'd love it if you could show me if you've got any comments on the show here, if you want to, any thoughts you want to share, then please by all means add them into the comments box. And apart from that, folks, have a superb, wonderful Saturday. And if you're in that relationship and you're not talking about money, embrace it and start having those conversations. So until next week, folks, I'll bid you adieu.